Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and this is going to be my trans rights readathon wrap up. I haven't done a sit down video in a while, and in fact since my TBR for this readathon, I've been a bit busy. Some with actually doing stuff, some with playing Baldur's Gate 3. In any case, I'm going to try to go fast because my camera's battery is dying and this one takes forever to charge. First, we have Trans History, a graphic novel, which I read the audiobook version of, so obviously I didn't fully appreciate the graphic non-fictionness of it, but I thought it was really well done in the audio format. I really appreciate all the work that was done. It goes back to like the Pharaoh, who was a woman but also kind of was a man. We're not really sure if she was a trans man or like how she would consider herself exactly, because there's not that much like first-hand accounts, but there was some trans umbrella type vibes going on there, and that's kind of how they treat a lot of people from history who appear to be under the trans umbrella from what we know about them and what we know they thought about themselves or how they acted in society in some kind of gender non-conforming way. And that was really interesting to hear about because, once again, much like with asexual people, a lot of people think that trans people have only existed for the last like 20 years and it's this newfangled thing that's like cultural, but no, it's human. So that was really interesting and helpful, and I gave it 5 stars. Then we have How to Bare Your Neck and Save Iraq, which is one that I've been reading for a long time, but I didn't read like the last little bit of it for a long time, and I finally read that. This is a conclusion sort of to, there's going to be more books, but it like wraps up a lot of the like arcs from the previous 2 books in the How to Date a Vampire series. I really love this series. It tends to have a trans main character and a disabled main character in each couple. Sometimes it's the same person sometimes both characters are some kind of trans and some kind of disabled, and I really appreciate that representation. And one of them is always a human so far, and one is a vampire. So that's fun too. And it's in a slightly alternate modern day where people know about vampires and the law is very anti-vampire in that it considers them not to be human, and therefore any like rights that humans have, vampires don't have. And so living in that world is very interesting, especially as a lot of these characters tend to be multiply marginalized. It is a spicy series, but not very much. They are totally open door, but there's only about maybe 2 or 3 spicy scenes per book. So it's definitely more in the romance genre than the erotica genre. And I think that this last installment does a great job of continuing the series. 4.5 stars. The Salt Grows Heavy. I found this one in my library's audiobook collection, and it is about a mermaid and a plague doctor who fall in love, but mostly it's a horror because these two, one of whom is the plague doctor is non-binary, are like adventuring together and come across a village of people eating children and some evil surgeons, I think they're called, who like control the children and are like horror. It's a horror book. Very graphic, and it was pretty gross, and there's a lot of gore. It was like right up to where I couldn't, if it was any more gory or gross, I couldn't have read it. I listened to it on audiobook. I saw in the reviews that a lot of people didn't like the really big, I think they're called $10 words in the book. I did not notice those at all as I was listening to the audiobook. So maybe listen to the audiobook if you don't like too many $10 words because it's much easier to just let it flow over you in that case. 4 stars. Gooseberry, which is by the same person who wrote Dear Mothman, and I really like Dear Mothman. I did not really like Gooseberry. This kid who professes to know lots about dogs doesn't know anything about dogs and is very selfish towards the dog, and you shouldn't be selfish towards a reactive dog because they will bite you if you ignore their body language. And this child is very lucky they did not get bit. And also, it's also about the kid being in the foster system and basically trying to find love from this dog because they are not getting that from their foster parents. They get good foster parents right at the beginning of the book, but before that it's been really bad, and they've wanted a dog for a really long time in dogs and service dogs, but they don't actually do any decent research on dogs. They just watch a couple of videos and then put a bunch of videos in their to be watched section and don't actually watch them, and profess to know lots about dogs, and they don't know much about dogs, because if they did, they would not think they could train a reactive dog into a service dog in a short amount of time. The foster parents that the non-binary child gets pretty close to the beginning of the book are great, except that they also don't research dogs before getting the dog for the child and think that they can just trust this child who they just met to not antagonize the reactive dog and get bit. Because, your foster kid getting bit by a dog you just adopted without researching dogs at all is a good way to have that foster child taken away. So I don't know what they were thinking. The author's point of view seems to make it seem like they would have been horrible people if they had not adopted the dog. And I think that that is not true. I think that you need to do a lot of research on dogs before you adopt a dog, especially a reactive dog. So yeah, I don't know if the author doesn't know about dogs or just wrote this book in a weird way. But I was offended on the dog's behalf. And also something I wrote about in my review is that the kid has a lot of trauma and a lot of neurodivergence in the autism to ADHD sort of area. And it's mostly undiagnosed on page, but they react to their friends and such who have been really good friends as B has transferred between lots of different foster situations. These friends have been constant for them, but they still react out of trauma and overstimulation and autistic, seeming to me as an autistic person, weirdness, nastily to these people, and that's not portrayed as a big deal or as B's responsibility. It's that's just a thing that B does. And it feels like the author's trying to more normalize that and have B not need to take responsibility for being an asshole because they are traumatized, etc. And it's no, just because your mental illness and or neurotype made you do it doesn't mean it's not your responsibility. So there were lots of things I didn't like about this book. The prose and the writing, the way it was written, of the wording, that was good. And I really liked almost everyone in the story except the main character. If the author has personal experience with the foster care system either, or if they just did a lot of research, but there were a few things that seemed kind of off about the way that was written as well. Because I have personal experience with the foster care system. I believe it varies state by state, but there's a lot of stuff that's national in the US for how that works. Do I know this is in the US? Not necessarily. So I'm afraid I have to give this one 3 stars. I did really like what happened to the bully who likes to play pranks at the end. Moving on, we have a highlight, The Prince and the Dressmaker, by Jen Wang. This one I wasn't sure if it had trans rep or not until I started reading it, but the prince talks a little bit about how he feels about gender pretty close to the beginning of the book, and it basically indicates that he feels like he has two genders and that sometimes he's one and sometimes he's the other. So I felt like that is pretty much fitting under the trans umbrella, so I read it for this readathon. I loved it. It is a lot about being in the closet, and it is a lot about friendship. Also about how you can be privileged in one way and marginalized in another. Like, the prince is marginalized as gender fluidity, etc. is not super accepted in this society, but also privileged in other ways, like being the prince, and how kind of that interacts with being friends with someone who is not a prince and is kind of poor, but who is cis. And it's about art, because one of the main characters is a fashion designer and personal expression, of course. I love the beginning, the middle, and the end. I love the whole thing. It is absolutely delightful. Now I want to read more books by this author. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to leave a comment, I'd love to hear anything about any of these books that you have read or that you want to read, or anything that you read during the Trans Rights Readathon. If you'd like to leave an emoji, how about something in the non-binary flag colors, which are purple, yellow, black, and white. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye!